What's up, everybody? Welcome back to a new video. If you're new around here, please make sure to like and subscribe down below. So, for those of you that are not new here, you would know that every month we do a presidential prediction and an update on where all the races are currently standing. For example, later this year we have the 2024 presidential election. Every month we check in on the polls, see how they're doing. We check in on the swing state polls, and we make a prediction map in the swing states based on that prediction. So that being said, let's go ahead and take a look. So the polling currently shows Trump with a 1.5% lead over Joe Biden. And if you look at the swing states, all of the swing states, I don't really consider North Carolina to be really much of a swing state. I think that's safely in our column in the Republicans' hands now. But in Arizona, he's up by 5. In Georgia, he's up by 3.8. Michigan, he's up by 1.2. In Wisconsin, he's up by 1.8. And Trump retook the lead in Pennsylvania by 1 point. Now, if we look at the 5-way race that includes Stein, Kennedy, and West, there's some controversies going around on Stein right now, which that deserves a whole video solely on its own. But with all of the third parties in the mix, Donald Trump is leading with a 2.2% margin, which is impressive, because considering on this day, Joe Biden was leading in the polls by 5.3 points, and this day in 2016, Clinton was leading by 7.3. So if these are the numbers, then Donald Trump is probably, I'd say, in the best position politically. So that being said, we're going to fill out this map. We're going to start with the Democrat states, as ridiculous as that sounds, and we're just going to fill these states out. We're just going to kind of reverse them. So every Democrat state, the Democrat safe column would possibly also include New York and Hawaii, Illinois. There's one more state that I'm forgetting. We'll come back to that state because there's going to be more to talk about. But with that being said, we're going to now fill out the foregone conclusion. Republican states, Nebraska, they might do winner take all there. It's still working its way through. I don't think that's really been making a lot of progress, but it is likely to make some progress before the next election. Colorado was the safe state, and Maine's first district. Those are both safe Democrat. And South Carolina is safe Republican. I don't really think there's any explanation. Then Maine's second. Now, Republicans are at 146 electoral votes. When you add Alaska, that gives them 149 electoral votes. This is the floor map for both political parties, Democrats and Republicans. Now, I expect them to get more seats than this, but this is their floor. This is their floor for all of the votes as of right now. That being said, we're going to fill out the likely Republican states, Florida and Texas. Yes, I see Florida possibly going to Trump by more than 12 at this point, based on the way the voter registration is going in Florida and the way it's been moving to the right, and Republicans flipping a ridiculous amount of counties in the state. And that could definitely push Florida more right. In 2016, Democrats had an advantage. And in 2020, Republicans had a narrow advantage, and they won the state because independents voted for Trump. And now they have over a 1 million vote lead over the Democrats. So Florida could go to Trump by more than 12. We'll have to wait and see, especially because DeSantis won with a big margin of close to 20, or he won by about 20, and Rubio won close to 20, not too far behind. So that could be a sign that Florida is getting ready to have a big red wave this year. We'll have to keep it up to date because we haven't had a lot of polls out of Florida lately. But anyway, Democrat state, New Mexico, and I'm going to put New Hampshire in the likely Democrat column. Yes, I think it's going to be less than 10. However, I can't say for sure that it's going to be less than 5 either. My last prediction, I had it lean, but for now, it's going to be likely Democrat. Same goes for Maine at large. I know some polls have had Trump up at Maine at large. I don't really think that Trump is going to win Maine at large. It'd have to be a very good night for him to do that. It's possible. It would flip before a state like New York or Maryland or Illinois, for that matter, or Colorado or New Mexico. Again, all of this comes down to how good he does in terms of the popular vote, and we're working off of a 1.5% popular vote. This is a Trump plus 1.5 popular vote, from what I know. Republicans, lean Republican states, North Carolina, based on the polling. If we take a look at North Carolina, we theoretically could say that this would be a likely state, but Trump is not above 50 yet. Once he's above 50, we'll be able to make a much more affirmative answer. But for now, we're going to keep that in the lean column. Now, I won't say before the end of the year that we move it into the likely column based on the way the polls shift, but as of right now, the polls indicate a strong lead for Trump in the state of North Carolina. I don't consider North Carolina really to be a swing state anymore. I consider it more to be a red state, a red-leaning state, not really a swing state anymore. And they're going to prove it November if they elect Mark Robinson to the governor's mansion, which I suspect that they will, even though polls have been a little bit off for him lately. And next up, the state of Georgia. This is another state that Donald Trump is leading in by over 2. Donald Trump is leading in Pennsylvania by 3.8 percentage points. If we look at what he got in Georgia in 2020, if we look here, Donald Trump narrowly lost the state of Georgia in 2020, while also while having a less favorable year in the state of Georgia. He will likely improve in some of the suburbs. Like usual, they will probably push further left, and up here in northwestern Georgia, that's probably going to swing back to the right, if I'm being totally honest. It depends how far the Atlanta suburbs move left, and considering black turnout was really high in this election, it's possible that black turnout dips because of how unpopular Biden is in the state, but we'll have to wait and see at the end of the day. We'll have to see where that moves and exactly what happens, but either way, that Trump's leading in Georgia by 3.8 points is a very good showing for him, considering he narrowly lost the state and he wasn't leading the polls in Georgia in 2020. So that's a very good sign for him. Now, before we get too far, I'm just going to fill out Nebraska second in the lean Democrat column. I really don't think that that's going to flip. But anyway, Georgia, lean Republican. Now we're going to touch on the state of Arizona, and Donald Trump is ahead in poll after poll after poll by more than 2 points. I'm starting to wonder if Donald Trump is going to take the state by a lean margin. I'm not going to say it happens, but that's just what the polls are showing. So for this current prediction, we're going to put Arizona in the lean Republican column. Now, I don't expect it to be a lean margin. I expect Arizona to be more of a tilt margin, but if the polls are correct, it's going to be a tilt, or it's going to be a lean win for Donald Trump at the end of the day. And now we're going to move on to the Republican talk. Now we're going to move on to the Democrat lean states, Virginia and Minnesota. Virginia, it could get closer, and it will get closer. But I think the biggest difference in the state of Virginia is that Virginia, the northern suburbs, are just so blue that it's very hard to overcome. Now, the reason Youngkin's governor right now is because it was an off-year election. That's the first thing. Usually off-year elections have lower turnout than presidential elections. And with Donald Trump and Joe Biden both being on the ticket, both of those bases will be energized to come out. Now, Donald Trump's base will be more energized than Joe Biden's, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, I think Joe Biden is going to barely squeak out a 2 to 5 point win in the state of Virginia. We haven't really had any polls out of Virginia lately, and if we did, I would know about them. But for now, Virginia is in the lean Democrat column. Nebraska second. That's going to be a video. That's going to be a discussion for another video because there's a lot of stuff happening in Nebraska second that warrants an entire video. So we'll save that for the next video. And Minnesota, Donald Trump could win the state if RFK wins by a bigger margin than what he's currently polling at. I know I've seen polls that had it within 2. I don't think it's going to be within 2 for Trump or for Biden, but we'll have to wait and see, especially because Biden won it in 2020 by a pretty healthy margin. Joe Biden won Minnesota by a roughly 7-point win in 2020. Now, I think it's going to get redder than this, absolutely, because the rural areas are still getting redder, and they now have new leadership, and they came really close to flipping the AG race in 2022. So if Minnesota continues to move the way they are, it's definitely going to be a very narrow state. We'll have to wait and see. And Clinton only won the state by 1.7 points anyway. Next up, we're going to move on to the toss-up states. All these states are going to go to Trump by either under 2 to Joe Biden or to Donald Trump at the end of the day. We're going to start out with the state of Pennsylvania, and we are going to work backwards. So Donald Trump currently has a 1-point lead in the aggregate, and Joe Biden has led some of the polls in the state of Pennsylvania, for a short time, Joe Biden was up in the state by like 0.1, but Donald Trump has since retaken the lead after some other polls like Emerson and other polls have come in. Even CBS is saying Trump's up by 1. But the Franklin and Marshall poll really was an outlier. It really didn't have Biden over 48. It didn't have Biden over 50, and it didn't have Trump above 40. If there were independents in that poll, they probably, if they broke for Trump, how would that have turned out? That would probably be over, probably by a +2. So that's an outlier poll. Same goes for some of these other polls. The Muhlenberg College one, I really wouldn't consider that to be an outlier because that's a Biden win by a more respectable margin. But at the end of the day, polls like this Susquehanna, or however you pronounce it, is an outlier because it's over 5. It's a ridiculous margin for Trump to lose it by. But anyway, we're going to have Pennsylvania narrowly going Republican at the presidential level in 2024. I think Trump's going to retake the state pretty narrowly. It's possible that it goes to Biden. This is the key to the White House. If you win Pennsylvania, you're winning the rest. If you win the rest, say you win Wisconsin, you're going to win all 3 of them. If you're winning Michigan, you're winning all 3. The Rust Belt votes basically the exact same way every single time. Next up, we're going to move on to the state of Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, Trump is up by about 2 points. Now, the aggregate shows it a little bit less than 2. Bloomberg has him winning by 4. Now, I don't think he's going to win by 4 points. I think he's going to win the state, but it's probably not going to be by 4 points. I think it's going to be by a more respectable, like 1 to 2 point margin. So Trump is barely going to win the state of Wisconsin, probably by 1.5 or less points. So theoretically, that is going to be a state that could go either way, but we'll have to wait and see what happens on election day. Next up, we're going to talk about the state of Michigan because I think that this is another really key one. Donald Trump is leading in the state by 1.2 points. And in this day in history, Biden was leading by 5.5 and Clinton was leading by 10.5. And considering Trump is once again up by 1.2 in Michigan, that's a very good sign for him. And Trump is probably going to easily retake the state of Michigan because a lot of people there are not really happy with the way the economy is going in Michigan. Next, and then last but not least, the state of Nevada. Nevada, this is not really going to be a key for the White House, but it's really going to be a factor for the Senate race because you got a Senate race, you got Sam Brown or Jeff Gunter, and if Trump wins the state by what the RCP average is showing, then Trump could take Gunter or Brown with him to the Senate and take out Jackie Rosen. But at the end of the day, I really don't think that's going to happen. We're going to have to wait and see exactly what happens. But for now, I think Trump narrowly wins the state of Nevada by about 1 point. That's it, 1 point. I think Trump wins by 1. If he wins by 3, sure, he could take the Senate nominees with him, or he could take some congressional nominees with him. And there you have it. That would be your final map. Republicans 312 to Democrats 226. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're new around here, please make sure to like and subscribe down below and enjoy the rest of your day.